Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, welcome to another Honeycomb webinar. I'm joined by David Fields today, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. The subject we're going to talk about today is a really critical one: how to make rainmakers. It's probably something that I think I've heard every boutique consulting firm founder mention to me, every team leader in a larger firm. Everyone has this desire and this need, frankly, to broaden where the weight of pressure and responsibility lies in terms of business development and sales, and move it away from just one or two key individuals in their team. So hence the importance of this topic today. Really excited to be joined here by David. Honeycomb has worked with David and his company before. Some of you may have attended an event we ran in London last year. And David literally wrote the book on this type of space, the Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients is a text that we make reference to, and I highly recommend as well. So I'm really excited to have David here with us today. I'm going to pass over to him in a minute. Just for those of you that are following the webinar, please do ask us questions. We really want you to engage with us. I'm sure David is going to re-emphasize that as well. You can do so by adding comments into the chat here. David will see those directly. I'll also help to sort of orchestrate that, particularly if I see themes coming through. And if we're taking it too easy on David, I'll ask him a couple of difficult ones as well. He's given me permission to do that. So I think that's about all I need to say in terms of getting started. So David, thank you very much for being with us today, and over to you.
Excellent, Colin. And I love that the video you just ran at the end, it said Colin, like 10 out of 10. Colin was the best. So that was...
No, I didn't choose that, but it's
yeah,
not.
that was good.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So then we'll dive in. I'm going to scoot to my left for a moment once I'm on the screen so that you can see the screen behind me. And if you happen to be watching this on your phone, I'm going to suggest you turn it, I'll put it turn it landscape, because otherwise you're not going to see very much. And hopefully some of you I got to see in person when I was in London a couple of months ago. Do me a favor, down here is the chat so I can see. Just type in a hello or say where you are. Tell me, yes, I saw you before. No, I didn't. So at least I get some sense of who's here. And it takes an extra minute or so sometimes for it to pop up here. So be bold, share so that I can see that you're here. And in general, just ask questions. This is actually the content portion of this is fairly short because it's meant to be discussion. And ideally, I get you out of here ahead of time. Excellent, Mark, perfect. So let's dive into how to make rainmakers. I'm really glad you're here. I'm actually really glad I get to be here with you. And Ames, perfect. And Steve, excellent. We're working near London. Perfect. That's outstanding. All right, let me give you a rough agenda. Here's what I'm thinking we're going to do. You can change it, though. Rainmaker challenge. I'm just going to talk a little bit like, why is this such a challenge? Like, what is the problem here? How come we don't have our firms filled with rainmakers? Okay, that's maybe 5-10 minutes. Let's go over that. And hi, Rob. And then we'll get into the meat of it, which is how to make rainmakers. Yeah, maybe 10-15 minutes. We'll see. If you ask a lot of questions, maybe it'll go a little bit longer. And then let's have discussion. So we should be able to do this whole thing in 40-45 minutes. But if you ask a lot of good questions, maybe we'll stretch it to 50-55, something like that. Okay? And there's a LinkedIn user who your name didn't come up, but Cardiff. Excellent. That is excellent. Okay, so let's dive in. Before we do that, actually, there's sometimes people who come to this particular webinar come with the wrong thing in mind. I just want to make sure that I manage expectations. We're going to cover making rainmakers. How do you create more business developers? What we are not going to cover is how do you actually make rain yourself? How do you win more clients? We're not doing that in this particular webinar. I'm not going to teach you how to win clients. If you want to learn how to win clients, go get this book. It is I'm biased because my name's on it, but it is the best book on the topic. And if you go to Amazon, you'll see the ratings and reviews and all of that. And we have tons of content because obviously we teach this. But that's not what today is about. Okay. Perfect. Let's go to the challenge. We have a pretty fair amount of data on this. And what we find is in small firms, we think of firms being, I'm going to say dollars just because I'm so used to it. Call it anything under $100,000. Maybe it's $100 million, 70 million pounds, maybe. I mean, the dollar's plummeting. Maybe it's only like $20 million, 20 million pounds now. Anyway, any kind of small firms, we find that 80% or more of revenue is driven by under 5 people. As a matter of fact, if you look at firms under $50 million, so it would be 30, 35 million pounds, it's usually 90% of revenue is driven by only 3 people. You look at a typical $20 million firm, you can see it's like 1 or 2 people are driving almost all of it. They're driving the lion's share of revenue. And then the whole rest of the firm, which might be 40 or 60 people, they're not driving anything. So this is what we have seen. And here's what I'm wondering from you, and I don't know how quickly it'll come in. Just type in, if you don't mind, into the comments, rough guess, and nobody else will, it's just numbers, so people won't know what to associate this with. What percentage of your revenue come from your top 3? What's your best guess? Is it 50, 30, 80, 100? For a lot of firms, it's 100. And I'd be really interested to see that as that comes in. And then, assuming that is a high number, does this worry you at all? Are you concerned that most of your revenue comes from 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people? 100%, Mark. Yeah. That would be really common. We see 100% come in, especially we see firms that are $10, $15 million, so it's one person. 65, that's actually a pretty good number, Steve. 65 from your top 3. Excellent. So is it concerning? And because it takes a little while for the comments to come through, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I'm gonna posit for you that for most of folks, Crystal's at 80, this is a little bit concerning. And yeah, and thank you, Amy. That I think you're right to be concerned, because having a few rainmakers or having very few rainmakers is problematic. And it's problematic for a few reasons. One, high risk. If you are dependent on 1 or 2 or 3 people, and one of those people leaves, is incapacitated, anything happens to them, you're all of a sudden down maybe half of your revenue. Or if you're the sole rainmaker, you're down all of your revenue, which I'm sure keeps you up at least some nights. So it's very high risk to have so much tied up in one person. James, you're in London, over 30% from top 3. That's out of 120. Okay, so you've got a pretty sizable firm, and you have at least some dispersion, which is excellent. Another reason to be concerned about this is it limits your growth. What we have seen is in most firms, especially firms, again, under, call it 50 million pounds, 70 million pounds, it's rare to have a rainmaker that delivers over 5 million. Which means if you only have 2 or 3, or 4, your growth is capped. There are a couple of heroes sometimes that we've seen folks deliver 15. And if you're in the IT space or doing big data projects, you might be selling $3 million, $5 million projects. But by and large, what we see, especially for any kind of management consulting, is 2 million, 3 million, maybe 5 million is a cap, which means as a firm, you're limited unless we can get more people winning business. And it affects your market value. For anyone who's gone to market or is thinking about going to market at some point, you know that there's, the growth is a big piece. So that's going to affect it, and your EBITDA or your net operating income. But buyers are also looking for 2 engines. They're looking for, do you have a delivery engine that is solid? And my guess is all of you have solid delivery engines. And they're looking for a business development engine that's solid. And that will drive your multiple. So it does affect your market value, whether or not you've got more rainmakers. If you can point to look, we have this actually fairly large cohort, all of whom brings in business. It makes you much more attractive. Having just completed a sale recently with a client where we created a cadre of rainmakers, I can tell you it bumped the fees, the multiple, by a couple of points. And that's for real. That's real money. Okay. So we know to be concerned. So what do we need? Like, what does it take to have a rainmaker? Well, a rainmaker has to have the right mindset. They have to have some knowledge. They have to know how to make rain, what the approaches are, and then have some skill at it. It does take a little bit of skill. That's it. Mindset, knowledge, and some skills. Except these aren't all built equal. My little Venn here is not reflective of the truth. Our experience has been, this would probably be a better depiction of the Venn, because we are in a very human business in consulting, and winning consulting business is a very cerebral game. So almost everything, the differences are all up here. The differences between consultants who can win business and consultants who can't is largely up here. Yes, they definitely need some skills. And yes, they definitely need knowledge. But a lot of it is just how they are thinking, what they are thinking, how they process in the moment. It's very much a mindset game. And the most important mindset are actually your mindsets. As a consulting firm leader, it's your mindset that is going to determine how many rainmakers you have in your firm. So we're going to talk about the mindsets of rainmakers themselves. It's actually yours that it probably changes everything. This makes or breaks the game. And that's because the most obvious and appealing approaches, and we're going to go through some of these, the ones you have probably tried, generally don't work. So let's talk about the 4 most common approaches. And I'm just looking at comments here to see what folks are saying. Let's talk about the 4 most common approaches. I'd really appreciate your feedback on, yeah, we've tried this, or no, we haven't tried this. Yes, it worked. No, it didn't work. Okay? Because there's no absolutes, not in the world of consulting anyway. Here's the number 1 solutions most small consulting firms try at least once, usually 3 or 4 times. And that is to buy business development by bringing in a rainmaker. We are going to hire a professional BD person, a salesperson, someone who's really good at business development. That's who we're going to. That's going to be our solution. And almost every firm tries this. Most firms, small firms, we see try it 2 or 3 times, and it doesn't work. The vast majority of times, and we've worked, with at this point over 400 firms, we have seen this quite a lot. It is extremely, extremely rare that this works. It almost never works for firms under $50 million. You can do the translation as to what that is in pound sterling. I will give you 2 exceptions. Okay, if you've tried this, let me know. Sales training doesn't work. We're going to talk about that also. If you have tried hiring a business developer, just throw it in the comments here so we can see. Yeah, I've tried this. No, I didn't try it. Always helpful to get more feedback and get a little bit more data. And while you're telling me that, I'm going to show you 2 exceptions. Let's think about the consulting along a couple of axes. There's low fee work and there's high fee work. There's sort of commodity implementation type work, and there's sort of strategic IP oriented work. I'm not saying one is better than the other. What we have seen is BDRs, sales reps that set meetings, meeting setters, can sometimes work if you're in this sort of commodity low fee world. We have a client in Poland that we did get BDRs to work for because their work is fairly low fee. Crystal's tried, excellent. And what's interesting is I was talking with them last week, and even for them, they're finding that the sales, sort of a low cost appointment setter isn't working so well now. So this, this just, it will work if you are really in a low fee commodity kind of business, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, smart on you, Del, for never trying, or maybe Delia. It's hard for me to see that quite so small. Here's the other possibility for a salesperson, which is what we call a golden Rolodex. I know I'm dating myself by talking about Rolodexes, but this occasionally works. So this is somebody who has who's been in the industry a really long time, seems to know everybody, is very, very connected, and can get you meetings at the C-suite level or the VP level or the level where these decisions to bring in a consultant are being made. It works, though, even that only works in a couple of particular cases. In local markets and in short tenure markets, we have seen this work. Meaning, if you are building your practice in Manchester specifically, in Leeds specifically, you're not broadly across Europe or even England. Like if you have a really narrow area, there might be someone connected in that area who just knows all of the leaders. That could be a useful person. Alternatively, if you are in the kind of industry where there's rapid turnover and people are going from, it's sort of revolving door, people go from company to company, sometimes with all of that movement, a golden Rolodex will work. But there are a couple of challenges with this. One, these people are hard to find. Typically, they're end of career, because in order to accumulate that Rolodex and really make those connections at those high levels, they've been in it for years and years, decades, and they may not be particularly interested in doing this kind of work. So they're very difficult to find. They tend to be very expensive. Again, end of career, usually pretty successful. If they were in sales and they made all of these kinds of connections, they were very well compensated. So you're looking at hard to find, expensive people. And again, given their typical seniority, often they want some sort of partnership. They want some equity. All of your firms are different. A totally different webinar we give on how to distribute or whether to distribute equity and bring in partners. Any of you who have experience in this know adding partners is not an easy business. It can spell trouble. And so to just give some sort of partnership or equity stake for a Rolodex tends to be very problematic for most firms. So a golden Rolodex can work. We've seen it work in a couple of firms. We have a client in London where we've had some success with this. Finding the person took a really long time, and then getting them situated right took a long time. So by and large, it's not where I would go first. So if you can't buy it, you have to make it. If you can't buy Rainmakers, you have to make Rainmakers. So let's talk about ways to make Rainmakers. Number 2 solution most firms try is incentives. They tell their consultants, look, we'll give you an extra 1,000 quid. We'll give you 10%. We'll give you some amount if you bring in business development. Close a deal and you get all this extra money. Because if you have the right or enough BD incentives, you'll have BD success, right? Wrong. It just doesn't work that way. These sort of things fail in most consulting firms. One, just setting expectations. We expect you, now that you're a senior consultant, to bring in business. Doesn't work. We'll give you a lot more income if you will bring in business. Doesn't work. Hey, look, Bob, look, Sally, look, Amy, Crystal, whomever. It's part of your job. You really need to do this. Doesn't work. The incentives piece doesn't work because most consultants are not coin operated. Many salespeople are coin operated, meaning they will chase the monetary rewards. But that's not why consultants get into the business. Consultants get into the business to solve problems, to help clients, not just to make more money. And without the wherewithal and knowledge and support, just giving them more money doesn't make them win business. So again, let me know whether you've tried this, failed, or had success. Agree, Steve, BDRs typically don't work. Let me show you the third thing that most folks try, and that is training sessions just on their own. Steve, trying to turn consultants into sales doesn't work. Yeah, but we're going to get there. We are going to make them rainmakers. I promise you. And Colin, I'll be interested. Let me go through this, and I'll be interested in your feedback on this. Though we've talked about it, and Darian and I've talked about it. Training sessions, just in and of themselves, tend not to work. Yeah, sure. We have this idea. If we give folks the right BD skills, they should be able to do business development. No. It doesn't work that way. Because business development is only partially a skills issue. As I showed in that initial Venn, there's a lot of mindset involved. The half-life also of training is quite short. We learn it 1 week and then we kind of forget it by the next week. And the reps in business development and consulting are too few. Most of our firms, most of your firms, I'm assuming, you're not winning business. You're not chasing 5, 10 projects every day. Most consulting firms are working scores, maybe 100 projects in a year for a sizable firm. But that means across your rainmakers, how many attempts do you have? So you just don't have enough at bats for training to stick and be there when you actually need it. All right. Now, Colin, if you want to jump in, it would be helpful to get your perspective, because I don't want to do disservice to Honeycomb. So what do you think?
No, sure. I think, well, certainly, first, I agree completely with your Venn, as you know. So a pure skills training program that doesn't try to take into account or deal with the mindset issue or try to work on that in advance is not likely to work. You're right. You're going to have a fun day together, and people will have an awareness of some of the skills they might need, and then go back to their desk and
right.
do whatever they were doing before. We certainly have evidence of a broader program which seeks to really develop that mindset component, whether it's motivation, inner game, self-understanding of where they're trying to get to career-wise, packaging all that together first, and then combining it actually with some of the other things that you've talked about, like expectation setting and incentives. In our view, kind of work alongside other things like mindset being right and skills being available. But you also, I agree with you on the timing point as well. I think a good program has to set some foundations of skill and communicate expectation to a certain extent as well. But there has to be an ability to refresh at the right times. Just as you're saying, just before you go to the at-bat, as you would put it, you have to have the touch point again, whether that is some sort of interaction, some sort of reminder, some sort of refresher of the skill that you're going to need to really have strong muscles in.
Exactly. So, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that opinion and feedback. And you helped me realize that, at bats would be an Americanism, baseball. But maybe it works for cricket. I'm not sure.
What we say, innings? No, it doesn't quite work. Well, I think it doesn't quite work. At bat is probably I can't think of an English equivalent.
Yeah, that's right. We'll go with it. I think you all knew where I was heading.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fourth solution that we see a lot of folks try, and then let's get into how to actually make this work. The fourth solution is internal coaching and mentoring. In other words, do what I do. I'm good at this. I'm the founder, owner, partner, or CEO. I've been natural at this. Do what I do, because if I show you what I do, if you just stay by my side, you'll learn it, right? No, that doesn't work. And the reason that doesn't work is people who join consulting firms are not like people who found or run consulting firms. And I'll give you a few examples of this. And this is for a lot of firms we go into, this is like a real, oh my gosh, you're right, now I see it kind of moment. If you're a founder, owner, or CEO of a small firm, you are entrepreneurial by nature. You have a strong desire to build the business. Whereas consultants who join firms are all wonderful people, but they are workers. Their strong desire is to do good, meaningful work. They're not there to build a business. They're there to help clients. It's a very, very different mindset. Founders, owners, CEOs are highly resilient, meaning they are experienced at bouncing back from hearing no. Anyone who's at the top of the organization has faced rejection a number of times, has heard no more often than they would like. People who join firms, again, they're not trying to run something. they tend to avoid situations that can lead to a no because it's not fun. They don't have to do it. People at the top will sacrifice for the business. You're willing to set aside other life priorities in order to make the business succeed. The business is very much a part of you. People who join sacrifice the business. Building the business is not a primary life goal for them. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. They're just different, and we have to recognize these are different mindsets. At the top are sales-oriented because they know, all of us who are at the top know that the success of our firms and of ourselves depends on winning more engagements. We must get business on the door. But consultants, they may have some trepidation, some anxiety if the firm doesn't have a lot of revenue, but they can still be successful as consultants without winning business. They deliver good work and they're successful. And finally, a real big difference here, and it's part and outgrowth of the one I just went through, if people at the top, if you are a founder or if you own the firm or if the CEO of a firm or the managing partner, you don't view business development negatively. Part of the job. You might actually like the part of the job. Whereas your typical consultant, your typical joiner, really disdains sales. Sales is a four-letter word. And business development, therefore, don't want anything to do with it. So it's just different mindsets. Question for you, and I know we're a little delayed here. Have you seen mindset differences between yourself, between the top of the organization, and between joiners, your sort of line consultant? Because I'd be very interested to see whether, again, at your firms, you see what we have seen at so many firms, this real distinction between the top level and the folks who we want to become rainmakers. Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Perfect. All of this leads to a pretty fair question, which is it possible to actually build rainmakers inside your firm? And I saw someone say you need to use the naturals. Maybe, but let's get to that because I don't know if that's necessarily the case. The answer is unequivocally yes. You can absolutely build rainmakers. And so we're going to get into how, and I should tell you, of all the webinars we produce, in some ways, this is the least satisfying. I should have told you this earlier, right? Because I'm not going to give you a silver bullet, this will fix it tomorrow answer. But I am going to show you a proven approach to building rainmakers inside your firm. Agreed. Totally different wiring. So let's talk about how to make rainmakers. We have to go back to mindsets first. And again, not to their mindsets, to your mindsets. If you want to be successful at this, there are 5 mindsets to adopt. The first is understanding what we just went through. The people we're going to build into rainmakers, the people in our organization that are going to turn into perhaps not as strong as we are, but really solid rainmakers, bring in 2, 3, 4, 5 million of revenue. They are not like you. So just accept that, realize that. They're not going to sell like you, they're not going to look like you, but they can still be successful. Second, some patience. And this is going to annoy the hell out of some of you, and I apologize. Plan on 3 years to build rainmakers. Now, I have been giving this presentation for quite a number of years, but just a few months ago in New York City, I was at a conference and the CEO of Gartner was there. Now, Gartner is a pretty successful firm. They've done well for themselves. And the CEO on stage said, at Gartner, they have one limiting factor. So only one thing limiting their growth. And it's the number of salespeople. I went, oh, well, that's interesting. He said, we must build them inside. I'm thinking, holy cow, a firm the size of Gartner, you have to build them inside? As we have learned, we have to build them inside because it's the type of sale, same type of sale you make. And he said it takes 3 years for a rainmaker to be fully up to speed. And I was thinking, man, I wish I had taped that. So if it takes 3 years for a firm as large and robust and equipped as Gartner, yeah, it's 3 years. So a little bit of patience is required. It requires some generosity. You have built your network most likely over decades. certainly over, a score of years. And so the people you're bringing up are often younger, and they have not had quite as much time to develop relationships and may not have all the relationships at the level you have them. Therefore, you're going to have to give them some clients and relationships. And it's going to require some tolerance. You may not remember this, but way back when, you made mistakes. You made mistakes and lost engagements you probably could have won. This is going to happen with the rainmakers that you're building. They are going to occasionally make mistakes. And if you fire everyone who makes a mistake or say, forget this program, you'll never end up with new rainmakers. Okay. Again, we're not going to try to lose a lot of business. Usually we put folks on lower risk, lower fee engagements to try to win, but just accept they are going to lose some engagements that were you, the firm would have won. It's just part of it. And commitment. This takes some investment. It takes investment of time. It's going to take investment of resources, takes real money to build rainmakers. The good news is if you do this, we've seen this over and over again, you can create a broad cohort of rainmakers. I'm going to tell you how in 10 steps. So I'll show you the 10 steps and then we'll go through them. And you can be this is helpful or not helpful, thumbs up, thumbs down, just so I know we're heading in the right direction for you. Just throw it in the comments and I'll keep going. I'm going to give you the first 7 steps, and it's going to look like a lot, but it doesn't necessarily need to take long. 1 is commitment. I'll go through them. What does that mean? What are you committing to? 2 is capacity confidence. We must create capacity confidence for our rainmakers. We must have at least a decent message and a decent offering. Do not wait until you've got that perfect to start developing rainmakers. You just need it good enough. We need to model and communicate as leaders to the people we're going to try to bring up. We'll need to identify who we think could become a rainmaker. If you've got 120 billable people in your firm, it's not all 120 of them. Assign some responsibilities, especially around marketing, which I'll talk to, and reset some expectations. These 7 have nothing to do with what you were thinking, oh, is this going to be all that training and what you train them and all of that. This is all internal preparation. And it doesn't need to take long. But if you don't do these, then the next 3 steps, which are about the training and the support, won't work. So finally, here's the 3 steps that actually focus on those rainmakers. We have to create some relationship building skills because consulting is a relationship-driven business. We have to teach them some pursuit skills and then BD leadership skills. And there you are in 10 steps. This has been proven to work. You can make rainmakers this way. I'll go through each of the 10 steps, ask questions if you have them while I'm going through. 1, commitment. We just talked about it. Plan on it being 3 years. Assume half of your staff or more don't have the gene. That's different from being a natural. The people you would think are good at business development are not necessarily the people who emerge as great rainmakers. But there are people who they're just not going to make it. They might become decent farmers, and we can build those too. And assume you'll be surprised at who succeeds and who fails. We're working with a firm out of Chicago right now, and we have a cohort, and one of them said coming in, I don't want to do this. I don't like this. I'm the biggest introvert you'll ever meet. I don't like talking to people. And he is blowing the whole firm away now. So it's not always, they don't always know they're going to be great, and you may not always know they're going to be great. Set a budget for investing in and making rainmakers. And recognize that if you're investing in rainmaking, you might, that's a direct spend. So it might bring down your net operating income a little bit for a year or 2 while these people are coming up to speed and then bringing in more revenue. Okay, so that's a commitment. Are you ready to commit or not? Are you willing to commit to build your firm or not? I mean, it's a reasonable question. And yes or no are both reasonable answers. Second, you must remove delivery concerns and create capacity confidence. If a rainmaker has even the slightest concern that were they to sell the project, the firm couldn't deliver, because you don't have enough capacity, because they don't have enough capacity, because you don't have the capabilities, they will consciously or subconsciously torpedo their own efforts. So we must give the rainmakers that we want to build the sense that you sell it, we'll deliver it. Have no worries. If you can bring it in, we can make those clients happy. Okay, that's absolutely essential. Third, we have to have sufficient messaging and offerings. Fishing line would be the core of your messaging, and then the core offering, just like what do you do for folks. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be fairly clear what your firm does and for whom. If everybody in your firm has a different idea of what the consulting firm does, that's going to make it much harder for your rainmakers to succeed. Conversely, the more your offering sells itself, not surprisingly, the easier it is to make rainmakers. So if we can have a nice, compelling position in the marketplace, it will definitely make it easier to train these people to succeed. Fourth, as leaders, we need to model the right mindset and be positive about it, what we call right side up thinking. If you're not familiar with that, I would grab a copy of that book, The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients. Think of this as just being client-centric as opposed to firm-centric. And so we need to model that, and we need to model relationship orientation. Because a lot of these folks that are coming up, they don't come up that way. They're engineers, they're scientists, they are folks who are very, very good at their craft, but may not be really thinking about the people side of the business as much as they will need to in order to succeed in business development. And as a quick note, if you were especially if you were a founder, not just came on as a CEO, you may have had the experience of being able to win business by a slightly more aggressive firm first approach. The folks we're creating won't be able to do that. We need to bring them through a relationship-driven approach to business development, because that's comfortable for consultants. And by the way, everything I'm telling you, I don't know whether it works for anything outside consulting. I know for a fact it works inside consulting. This is all built for consultants. Step 5, just figure out who are you going to work with. It's not all 120 people in your firm or all 30 people in your firm or all 20. Everyone in the firm can be exposed to the basic concepts, and it's usually a good idea. So they understand what business developers are doing, but a smaller group should be in the development program. Colin, when I was over there before we were in the offices, people came. I have a client there. They're a reasonable size firm, a couple hundred or so consultants. We're working with 20. So, just think in that range. If your firm is 20 million pounds, there might be 8 people that you would want to identify. You do need to assign them also some responsibilities for building visibility, for marketing. Not all marketing has to be done by your rainmakers. You can have a marketing group. That is excellent. However, all rainmakers must participate in marketing in some way. And as much as possible, we want to separate the face of the firm from the founders and owners and CEOs. We want folks to actually start creating their own brands inside the firm. Now, that's usually towards year 2 and year 3, but just to let you know that that's coming. And 7, reset expectations. If you want your consultants to become rainmakers, you have to give them time to become rainmakers, to do rainmaking activity, which means they will probably have lower productivity and utilization goals. And you have to account for that when you're thinking through, do we have capacity? I know that is heresy for a lot of consulting firms and a lot of consulting firm leaders. We're just telling you that if we want this to work, we have to give people that room. For the development programs, what would you base your selection criteria around? Skill set, individual, seniority, et cetera. I would look for 2 things. It's a really good question. I would look for 1, seniority and desire to continue moving up, because in most consulting firms, to keep moving up, you do have to bring in business at some point. So they desire to move up. And there are some people who will raise their hand and say, I would love to be in the selling part of this business. And those people you bring in. Those are the 2. Anyone who's been in the business for 40 years and is like, I don't want to learn anything, you can leave them behind. And then set expectations for time devoted to business development. It takes some time. They have to learn. They have to do some activities, some outreach. So again, just make sure you've got your expectations right. Yeah, you bet. And now we can finally get to 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, and 10 are probably what you thought you were coming here to see, which is what are we actually going to teach people? First thing we need to teach people is some relationship building skills. That's typically year 1. And we do it by some training, yes, and all the stuff that we do, that Honeycomb does. Training is a big part of it. But we also have to give them tools, not just in systems. Yes, it helps to have a good CRM and those sorts of systems, but scripts and templates for thinking through the next call and some role play tools. All of that is very, very helpful. And then coaching is critical. Ongoing coaching, and so your Rainmaker has point in time access to, I'm going into a meeting tomorrow. What should I say? Let's practice this. That's where this works. So in year 1, what are we going to do? We're going to start changing mindsets. Let people in consultants know you don't have to become a salesperson to be a good business developer. Learn the BD process. There's a very well laid out process that's proven to work for consultants. So just show them the process. Focus on their network core because they're going to have to build some relationships. There's a relationship business. A lot of them haven't been doing that. So over a year and over the next couple of years, they're going to start reaching out to people. They're going to start building more relationships in a way that feels comfortable for them. Learn to spot opportunities. And usually, not always, but usually you'll do best where we have the most success is in that first year, let them focus on farming. Win follow-on business. Spot those opportunities in your current clients and bring on more. And if we win a couple of new logos, outstanding. That's a bonus. Then step 9 is establish pursuit skills. That's usually year 2. We're still going to use the same system, but now yes, there's new mindsets to learn. You're going to practice something called the turn. It's a specific technique that helps you pursue new business. You start to lead the conversations, expand the network core beyond current clients. And now we're starting to get folks to bring in new logos. Then maybe we got a little bit of that in year 1. We can get a lot more of that in year 2. And that's very rewarding, right? And shows up for the firm. And then finally in year 3, now we're creating BD leaders in your organization. People who have the sort of most sophisticated mindsets. They understand enterprise selling and how to do triangulation. And they're very good at no matter what kind of objection comes up. And they can lead this whole process. That's where in 3 years you get yourself Rainmakers. So, them's your 10 steps. That's it. I hope that makes sense. Let me know whether it does or it doesn't. And that is all the content. What I'd really love to do is have some discussion and find out, what are your questions about this? What are your experiences? Where would clarification help? So from now on, it's really discussion. While we head into discussion, I do have a request. Scan the little QR code or go to davidafields.com, make rain. I've got a little 2-question survey there, I think. If you could fill that in, that'd be great. But ask questions. What questions do you have? Amy, you've asked some questions. There may have been some that I missed that went by. Colin, you can also feel free to ask questions. What questions do you have?
So I've got a question which I'll ask while we're waiting for maybe some of the comments to come through, because we do have a bit of a delay there, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a tough question that actually I was asked recently, and I'm not sure how good an answer I gave, by
Go for it.
a consultant team leader who had tried to buy the Rainmaker. And absolutely now understands that doesn't work. I want to make Rainmakers. I've got the patience for that. And therefore, what they are recruiting for, essentially what they are buying at a much more junior stage, so typically people 5 years experience out of education, say, are great delivery people, great people who have great potential to be consultants.
Yes.
Right. So she's buying people that can become great consultants to deliver, with the hope in the future of some of them will become Rainmakers, which kind of makes sense. What she asked me was, okay, I want to recruit them for consultancy, but I'd like to know if they have the potential to come through to be Rainmakers.
Yeah.
How do I spot that in someone who's 27 years old and hasn't been a consultant yet? And I think that's quite a tough question, so I thought I'd pass it through to you.
It's a great question. I mean, it's one of those, we get asked this all the time also. Just like someone asked earlier, and I apologize, I don't remember the name now, like, how do I know who to choose? It's not obvious. It's really not obvious. What's more obvious is who not to choose. Okay, there are clear, though again, I'm thinking about this one consultant in our group in Chicago, because he's one of mine, because we just talked with him. He's crushing it like nobody's business. He's in a cohort of 5, and one of them is not doing well. That's not unusual. Again, to be completely honest with y'all, not everybody succeeds. One's doing fine. 3 are doing great. And of the 3 who are doing great, one's in Australia, and then a couple are in the States. But one of them is just, he's going to become the rock star of the firm. And we never would have predicted it from the start. So, and I think if you recruited based on certain personality traits, you wouldn't have chosen him. So I think to some extent, the best way is to give people an opportunity to show up.
Yeah. Well, I loved your answer to Amy's question, and hi, Amy, it's really nice to see you on here. I think, choosing people to come into a select program that have the desire to do it and are therefore at least halfway there on the mindset game, and almost deliberately leaving, I think, people who, should be there, you might say, kind of should in quotation marks because of their seniority or their experience, but clearly aren't.
Yeah, well, we hit that a lot.
Yeah, and there's some value actually in excluding them at first to try and create a sense of demand within them.
Yeah, we often get brought in for partners who are slumping, or who just have never made it, and we'll often handle them separately. That some of them can make it and some of them can't. If they're too set in their ways and they don't want help, then you can't help them. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just you leave them where they are, or they're technical leads, or it's time for them to go, and then we're back to the whole partnership problem. But we do see that a lot. It looked like Steve had a question. Can you read that out? It's just, they're all a little small for me.
It's a bit small. I can read it out. Yeah, it's a good question, actually. How important do you find good, solid client industry knowledge is? For example, the ability to carefully compare your client to industry norms.
Yeah, very, very important. So part of the reason this works, this 10 steps I showed you, is because we are using consultants and making them into rainmakers. And for small consulting firms, especially, like any firm under $100 million, especially any firm under, call it $50 million, think about why the buyer is buying from you as opposed to a big name. They can buy the brand name, but they're buying from a small firm because they trust the individuals in the small firm. They want to look in the eyes of the person they're talking to and know that person gets them and gets their business, which is what a consultant can do, but a salesperson from the outside typically can't do. Especially at around $50 million, convert that to pounds, sometimes you have enough, if you've got a really focused firm, you have enough equity in your market that you have some brand name, and salespeople can start to, dedicated salespeople can start to work. Much below that, it tends not to, because again, what they're looking for is someone who does have that knowledge, who can say, look, here's how you're doing, but let me show you what is typical in the industry. So it's a good question, Steve. It's very important to have that knowledge.
Okay, great. Just another one. It's a LinkedIn user. We don't have a name, but for a 3-year program, turnover will be a cost to consider too, yes?
Yeah, it happens, absolutely. Over the course of 3 years, you will occasionally lose folks. Now, ideally, we are building firms with good retention. And part of what we have seen, so I would say if we took 100 consultants we've worked with across clients, we've probably lost 5, just to attrition, to people leaving, maybe 8. And partly when you position this as an investment in the person, like we're doing this for you because we believe in you. We believe you have the ability to move up in the firm. And this is a meaningful investment in you. They get that, right? And then there's this feeling that creates a little bit more loyalty. Now, if you have a toxic firm, then that is not enough to keep them. or if someone gets their dream job somewhere else, or a mission is calling them, you'll lose them. But this kind of work does help with retention. That's what we've seen. I love that question. What else? Everybody was like, this was perfect. I got everything I need to know. What about you, Colin?
I interpreted to be the sentiment of it. Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to sort of add to your answer actually on that the turnover question, because we've had some very interesting and I guess quite blunt interactions sometimes with firm leaders looking at programs like this. In that, the realistic facts on the ground is they have people in their organization who, if they can't become more adept at this, honestly, it sounds harsh, but there may not be a place for them in the firm anymore. And
yeah, well, that's different. Yes, that's there's a word for that, but basically that's the kind of attrition where you get to choose.
Yeah, it's the not unhelpful attrition necessarily. I mean, really, actually, their plan A is no, they embrace this and they move forward. But if they don't, unfortunately, the harsh reality is they can't stay. And in some ways, I'd like this program to help them self-select out of this. The part of the program is to make that expectation clear. And failing quite quickly and doing that in year 1, not in year 3, is not a bad thing.
I agree with that. And by the end of year 1, you will know whether people are have anything or not, and whether they're willing to engage or not. And then, so in a lot of firms, then we roll it, right? So we do rolling cohorts, or we start with the top level. Maybe it's the MDs and directors. And then once they've hit year 2, then we start going down to the next level, because the next level wants to often get what they're seeing. We're in a firm, working with a firm in Louisiana now, and we're in the 2nd or 3rd step down. Is if people are at a director level, whatever you want to call it, or some senior consultant level, and they all of a sudden see the people above them accelerate, they're like, whoa, I want to be able to do that too. I want to not just make their level. I want to get some of that acceleration juice. And I mean, that's what we've seen. And that helps.
We've got one more in from Steve. And Steve, thanks for your comments and engagement today. I've really enjoyed your comments. I think, so this one I'll read out for you, David. Do you find successful rainmakers are good team players? For example, leveraging other folks' experience. I wonder if there's a story behind that one. But anyway, David, I'll see what you think.
Yeah, I'm thinking across, rather than just give you a flip answer. I'm thinking across rainmakers. I would say sort of. They're not always great team players, but they're always right side up. They're always thinking about others. The great rainmakers of the ilk that we build out of consultants. There are great rainmakers who just through sheer force of will or personality, usually they're firm founders, can win a lot of business. But the kind we're building, they're usually okay team, do okay at teamwork. Sometimes they're great at it. But what's more important is that they are able and willing to put themselves in their client's shoes. Because that's the skill set we really need to build, is the empathy and understanding and listening and concern for the client. When you understand your client, you can win business and become a partner with your client. So that becomes almost the most central skill. Now, folks who do that will often show that same level of empathy and understanding and willingness to engage with others with their colleagues. And so they can be good team players. The reason I'm somewhat hesitant is I guess so much of our experience has been we're trying to build rainmakers from people who are technical experts in one way or another. Maybe they're PhD economists or whatever, right? And a lot of those folks aren't natural team players, but they can learn to be and become very adept at listening and engaging and understanding clients. So I'd be really interested, Steve, whether that resonates with you or not, and Colin, whether you've seen something similar.
Yeah. It's a great answer. Interesting. When I said that, I certainly couldn't sort of give you an emphatic yes, absolutely, they're already team players. And I think you were sort of similar there. I'm thinking of, and actually Steve made a comment earlier, which I kind of noticed earlier, and I completely agree with. What we're not trying to do is turn a consultant into a salesperson. In many ways, what we're trying to get them to do is turn them into better consultants who are able to do exactly what you've just outlined, and it's that we seek to achieve with training in many ways.
That's exactly right.
And I think we've probably all got someone in our mind that they were a terrific rainmaker, maybe still are. And I'm thinking of somebody now, who I won't name. But as well as having those excellent consultative skills about, I can get to the heart of the pain that client is feeling, consistently. They also had a real passion. They weren't the founder of that business, but had a real passion for seeing their own business thrive. And that, I think, makes them a pretty strong team player.
It can. What's great about consultants, and I think for many of you, you'll recognize this on your teams, is they have a passion for the client being successful.
Yeah.
And part of what we need to help them understand, and then give them some really good processes to take it from concept to life, is that passion, that desire to help your client succeed translates directly into winning engagements. Because that's part of how you can help them succeed. Where consulting is not sold, consulting is bought. And again, some of these realizations, because most of these technical experts think of sales as product sales. They're from a product world, or a manufacturing world, where manufacturing and sales and customer service are three separate things. But in consulting, they're all combined. We are the manufacturing plant. We create the results. We also service the customer and ensure the customer is happy. And that third piece, which means we also win the business. That is true of the best consultants. We do all three. So again, these are some of these mindset shifts, especially like some of the ones I'm talking to you right now are year one things. And giving people those mindsets, but in a framework where it can stick, is super helpful. Look, I promised we would end a little bit early, and I think we've been able to do that. Can I put that QR code up again? Joe, are you able to put me on screen for one more moment? Perfect. Let me put that up. So again, if you haven't gone here, you can do me a favor and do that. That would be a huge help. And Joe, thank you for running this in the background.
And thank you, David, of course, for doing all the hard yards here. It's been fantastic listening to you. Thanks everyone for joining as well.
Thank you all very much for joining. Colin, I don't know if there's any kind of closeout stuff you want to do. I wanted to give people a chance. They probably had a chance now. So if you want to come back on this.
We can not visually. We can leave that queue up. I'll just pop in and say hello again. Yeah, thank you very much to everyone for joining. But in particular, David, thank you very much. Really insightful stuff. Based on the comments that we've seen coming through, the questions, I'm sure everyone has got an awful lot out of that, and it's really hit the spot.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you all. Feel free to reach out, anyone, and take care. Have fun.
Thanks. Bye-bye.